And there we go. All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike, and I'm a software trainer. And I train all sorts of Microsoft applications, including Power BI. And what's kind of interesting is I'm actually in a Power BI course today. I'm training it. So I do have a hard stop. I know my slot was from 12:40 to 1:40, and I will keep the eye on the clock. And unfortunately, like I just said, I do have a hard stop because I got to get back to the students in the class. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera. And I just wanted to introduce myself there. And let's get going. So using Microsoft Power BI and why. So Power BI, first of all, stands for business intelligence. So I just got a really quick agenda that we'll go through. I'll cover what is Power BI, why should I use it? I always get a kick out of that. It's like, why wouldn't you? And an overview of both the desktop and the service. Quick introduction. My name is Mike. I facilitate training. I've been doing this for a really long time. One day I just decided, 20 sounds good. I'll just keep it there. And my specialty is anything with the word Microsoft on it. So anything from Windows to Azure, Excel to Power BI, and everything in between. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. I moved all the way to Roseville, and I'm married with 3 kids. So the big question, why? Well, in 2022, and a few years prior, of course, we are in an information explosion. The rapid increase of the amount of published data is amazing. And just a super quick example, in my overview of life, it wasn't that long ago that electrical companies would come to your house once a month and take a meter reader, a meter reading. So they got data once a month. Well, now that data is metered electronically. And electrical companies get the data every 15 minutes of every single day of the year. So massive amounts of data. And what do we do with it? And as that amount of available data grows, the problem of managing information becomes more difficult, which can lead to information overload. The reason why I highlighted it, yeah, it is a problem. We're not here to talk about problems. We're here to talk about solutions, right? And as leaders, we got to keep pace with this data explosion. And our good old familiar tool, which I love, Excel does an excellent job. But Excel is limited. First of all, there's only 1,048 plus rows in a spreadsheet. But some of us know we can turn on Power Pivot under options and manage up to 1 billion rows of data in Excel and build models in the background. But this tool called Power BI is way more versatile, can handle data way better. Plus in Excel, what do you got? You got charts, you got pivot charts, you got pivot tables. That's the only way you can visualize your data. With Power BI, which is a business analytical solution that lets you visual your data, visualize it, and share these insights across your organization. And you can embed them in apps, you can embed them in PowerPoint, Excel, get the app on your phone, which is just plain awesome, and you can embed them in websites. Power BI can connect to hundreds. And you know what? I always, I read about my profession, imagine that, to keep updated on it. And I read different numbers. Power BI can connect to 487, data sources. Power BI can connect to 632. We don't have to put a number to it, because if any application says it's a data source, they can export into a text file. You can't do that, it's not a data source. So therefore, in my opinion, we can connect to any data source. SQL, Oracle, IBM, Salesforce, Google Analytics, Amazon. I could go on and on. Now, the Magic Quadrant lists Microsoft Power BI way up in the upper right-hand corner as one of the leaders. Now, I don't have any real invested interest, I don't own a lot of stock in Microsoft. I made a big mistake in the late 80s on that one, but that's a different story. So there's other tools like Tableau. And the reason why I like Microsoft Power BI better is a simple fact that it's Microsoft, and Microsoft works really well with other Microsoft products like Excel, SQL, Amazon, or Azure. Also, I'll bet you a nickel that most of you who have access to Office 365, so that's where the betting comes into play. I bet you do have access to Office 365. You already have Power BI. It's in your Office 365 or M365. So counties, companies, organizations, so many people can benefit from Power BI because of the accessibility. We already have it in M365. It's rich features. It's part of 365. It's drag and drop functionality. Powerful connectivity to any kind of a data source. As long as you got the credentials down, you can connect to Salesforce, MailChimp, Azure, SQL, PDF files, Excel. And if you have the Pro license, it automatically reaches out to the multiple data connections and updates automatically up to 8 times a day. Premium license 48 times a day. Now, I always stop here with this continuous updates because back in the day, I used to sell drugs for a living. It was quite lucrative, but I was a pharmaceutical sales rep, and we would buy data from Walgreens or CSV, CVS. We would buy data from different data sources, or come on, Mike, focus in. We would buy our data from different drugstores so we would know what our doctors wrote. We would know our products, what we were selling. And if we were a week ahead of the game, we were on top of the world. Now it's like you got to be 8 hours or 1 hour. Holds us data, 49 minutes, refresh it. So it's continuous updates. And those auto refreshes, you set them up and it hits the data source, refreshes all your visuals. And it cascades from your desktop to your online service to your cell phone app. You can build meaningful reports with all sorts of visuals and reports that people can easily digest and understand. You can uncover actionable items. What do we need to do? And it's a Microsoft product. That's the best part of it. So, Power BI is not just one standalone application. It's an online service. You can download it onto your desktop and have a desktop. That's where you do the heavy lifting. The real work is on your desktop. You can publish reports, dashboards, apps, and all three of those are different things, okay? Reports and dashboards and apps. And you can see them on any device, anytime, anywhere. As mentioned, you probably already have it in Office 365, M365, as soon as it updates. Power BI is there. So we have it. And for those of you that are interested, you can download a free desktop version by just going to powerbi.microsoft.com. Download a free version and start playing with it. You can make really nice dashboards. And they're interactive. So you have slicers. You got cards that give me, hey, just give me the bottom line. What were our total sales? Sales trends. Any kind of a graphic. And when I say any kind of a graphic, Microsoft Power BI comes with about 35 different graphics. And then you can go out to the marketplace and download. Most of them are free. Some of them you do have to pay for, but most are free. And these other visuals that you can get are all tested to stand up to the test of time and also the amount of data that it can handle. And speaking of data, Microsoft Power BI has sophisticated data modeling in the background where you can make your models, but I kind of pause there, not only for dramatic effect, but also if you're not real familiar with data modeling, Power BI, when it starts bringing in the data, will automatically detect models and make a model for you. So now remember, I've been around for a while. You know, I remember the old Access days where I would make data models. I'd be making them by hand. Well, yeah, I sure can do that in Power BI. But I can also have Power BI just say, oh, here's the model we came up with. And they have about an 85% confidence rate that could be right. So I know I'm throwing a lot of data, a lot of information at you, and I will try super hard to have a Q&A at the end. But before I go into an actual example, is there any pressing questions at this point that might benefit the whole group?
Does not look like there's any questions in chat right now. Anybody can come off mute if you have any questions for Mike. I think we're good.
All right. Otherwise, I'll get into the example, like the hands-on example, and then there will probably be questions towards the end. And I am open to questions, but we'll do them in kind of batches. So I'll check in one more time. So I'm going to go ahead and escape my presentation and open up Power BI. And just so you know, Power BI is not just for work, because check this out. You can go to Power BI websites. Oh, Mike, come on. You can go to most websites and scrape data. So just for fun, this is what I do just for fun. I went to the Major League Baseball website, scraped all sorts of data from that website. And if that website ever changes, because it is public data, I can get at it. If that data ever changes, so does my table here. It'll always be updated. And then I made a visual of all the light blue dots are Major League Baseball parks that I haven't been to yet. And the dark blue dots are ones that I've been to. So it's not just for work. You can have all sorts of fun with Power BI. So what I want to do is just kind of walk you through kind of an overview of how Power BI works. So I've got the desktop version open, familiar looking ribbon, and I can get data right from my home ribbon. And when I say get data, oh my goodness. I can get data from workbooks, text files, JSON files. I can have files all organized nice and neat into a folder and just connect to the folder. PDFs, portable document files, they're not made for security. Word can open up a PDF. And if there's information in a table, we can grab it. SQL, Oracle, IBM, SAP. I'm not going to read all this to you, but I'm just trying to give you a feel for the power of Power BI. Exchange, Salesforce, GitHub, Google Analytics, non-databases, it goes on and on and on. So chances are, if you're working for a service or working with a service, I mean, or any kind of a data set, it's in here. For my example though, I'm going to just use a Excel file with about 140,000 records. So I click on File, choose a workbook, and connect. I find the file I need. And open it up. Now, it shows the different, in this case, it shows the different spreadsheets. It will show anything put into a table Because remember, by default, Excel has ranges. So you should convert your range into a table by going to Insert Table. And we have different spreadsheets that we can click on. And when I click on the text, see, I see a preview of the data, so I know which one that I need. So I may want to use this one, this data set, check mark it, and now basic database management is ETL. Extract the data, transform the data, load the data. So I'm at the E. I'm extracting one data set. So instead of loading the data into Power BI, I transform it. And when I click on transform, a background application that actually lives in Excel, also called Power Query Editor, opens up. And the query editor now lets me transform my data and profile my data to make sure everything is correct and valid and good. Because if you don't got good data, as a data practitioner, you're going to hear words that you never want to hear. And that's these. Are you sure this data is correct? So you don't want to hear those words, right? So you come into the Power Query Editor and you can profile it. So every column has a little teal line underneath it. And if it's solid data. And you can hover over it saying, that's 100% valid, Mike. No errors and nothing's empty. Oh, thank goodness. If you want more details on profiling, you go to View and look at your column profile. I'm sorry, column quality. And now that I don't have to use that teal line, I can just read. It's 100% valid, no errors, nothing's empty. To the right of the column name is formatting, because in data, you got to have correct formatting. And Power BI, when you load it, has an option turned on that will automatically detect the right and correct formatting. So Microsoft are like, because of machine learning, yep, these are formatted correct. But I always double check. I have 22 columns. I know that because I always keep an eye on my status bar. And you do not bring in columns you don't need, because you want your reporting to be efficient. So on my home ribbon, I can choose the columns I want instead of deleting the columns I don't want. So instead of bringing them all in, I just want to bring in product category, product name, order quantity, sales amount, marital status, gender, education, territory, country. Now, the reason why I'm choosing these is because, I have some forethought. When you read about data management, they always say the first thing is to make sure your data is cleaned, shaped, and transformed. I always draw back on that. I'm like, nah. First question you should ask is, what does the end users want to see? Because remember, the word query is Latin for question. So, okay, guys, what question do you want from your data? When you identify a question, you find the data to answer that question. That's what a query is. Question. This data will answer it. So I already developed the question. These columns will answer. So instead of bringing in 22, I'm going to bring in 8, because Power BI, oh my goodness, I could go on, but it has natural query language where you can just talk. Hey, Cortana, what was their sales in fiscal year 2020? It also has quick insights. So we can build all the visuals we want, but then we can say, hey, Microsoft, you analyze our data and give us some examples of visuals. And then you're like, oh, I never thought of that one. So now I've got my visuals in, and I want to format by using maybe user-friendly names. Like product name, I'm going to use that in a visual. So I should change the name of it to product name. Order quantity. Just simple things like this, renaming fields to everyday common language. We don't need sales amount. We can just name it sales. Double check the formatting. Because sales amount, now come on, let's rename that, Mike. Let's go, boom. There we go. I actually got to watch the keys I'm clicking on, that helps. But see, sales is set as a decimal number, but I may change the formatting to a fixed decimal number, 2 decimal points. Currency. Marital status. S means single. M means married. Well, I know that, but do my end users? So I'm going to right click, replace values. Every time you find an M, means married. And this could be billions of rows of data, by the way. I only have 140,000, but look how quick that was. And then I rename values where an S means single. Gender, same kind of thing. Right click, replace values. M stands for married. No, M stands for male. F stands for female. Tip of the iceberg on transforming your data, because you can select columns, merge them. The other term is concant. You can concatenate columns. You can merge columns. You can split columns. You can remove rows. It's just amazing. You can clean your text. You can change the case. You can trim. You can clean. You can do math. Multiply everything in this column by 1,000. So I'm just doing the tip of the iceberg. But here's the deal, everybody. You spend time making sure your data is correct and valid with your profiling tools. You make sure everything is easy to read, so we know F actually stands for female. I'm not sure what's going on with my typing skills today, but it is a Monday. But everything you do when you transform is tracked with these applied steps. So see, it's tracking. You just replaced the value. And Mike, for some reason, you did that 4 times. And every time you go up on this list, you see how the data was before you made the changes. So this is awesome for troubleshooting down the road. And also, everything you do when you transform data, it's listed here, as I just said. But you also have a cog. And you can say, oh yeah, I remember that back in October 10th, where I changed F to female. That's right. Or what changed? What columns did I remove? Click on the cog. Oh yeah. So every step is tracked, and you can go back and see it for troubleshooting. But now wait a minute. I'm only connected to one data source. I could be connected to 5. I only have one table at this point. I could easily have 8. So you spend the time to do this, and you do it once. And then every time our data is updated, remember we can schedule it 8 times a day. Power BI automatically knows where the source is. See, it's right there, the source. And it runs out and does all these transformations automatically for us. Now, if you're standing up, I'm going to suggest you sit down on this next thing. This next option here, because this is just unbelievable. Because if I go to my view ribbon in Power Query Editor, here's my advanced editor. So in the background, see it's writing M code. M for mashup. You take a bunch of data, mash it up. And if you're familiar with SQL or other VBA, other codes, you can read this, you can pick it up pretty quick. And if you're not familiar, force yourself to read. But see, line 2 tells me exactly where the source is, exactly what sheet I took, and then what columns I removed, what values I replaced. If you're comfortable enough, you can get right in the code and say, oh, I want to change M to this. So every time it refreshes, those 8 times a day, or 48 with premium, it runs it by this code, transform the data. Well, and you can even share the code with your colleagues, because in good old Microsoft Teams, let me bring Teams up here. In good old Microsoft Teams, I don't know if you realize this, but in a chat window, you even have a tool to share code. Right there. Cleans it, shares it, every code you can think of, plus a lot more I've never even heard of. So you can share that code too with your friends. All right. So I'm going to kind of go away from transforming it. It looks pretty good. Everything except for the table name, data 40,000. Like nobody will understand that. after a long weekend. So I'm going to just name this sales table. Go home on my ribbon, close, and apply the changes. So now I'm in good old Power BI desktop. It's loading all the data in. There are 2 connection modes. Import, probably the best because you control the data. But you can also do direct connects. So if you have data that's very, very large and changes rapidly, you probably want to do a direct connect. And also if you're working with a service, like say Salesforce. When you do a direct connect, you're relying on the source data and the source refresh times. Whereas if you import it, which is the default, see over on the left of my pane here, my view pane, see the data is right in Power BI. And now I can control it. Now that I have data in, I have a powerful visual pane where I can make powerful visuals. And when I say powerful, I'm saying that I'm using the word powerful, not because I have nothing else going on. It's because we can make artificial intelligent visuals. So that's powerful. I think I got time to show you 1 or 2 of those. I am watching the clock. So let me build a visual quick. First of all, we got to have an image, company logo. Oh, look at this nice image I got here. Boom. Just happen to have an image. Resize it. Resize it exact through the properties or visually on how I just did it. Most important information upper left, least lower right. So speaking about important information, in my visuals, you hover over, you see all these visuals. One is called the card. Give me the bottom line, right? You always bluff your way through work. Bluff your way through life, in fact. Bluff your way through emails. That's an acronym. Bottom line up front. So Mike, what's our bottom line? They want to know sales, I suppose. So I expand my sales table over on the right and click on sales. There's our bottom line, everybody. 23.1 million. Then we want to understand our sales by category and order quantity. So by category and how much they sell. So when you hover over, you should pick the best chart to showcase your numbers. And a cluster bar would probably be a pretty good job. So I just kind of move them around. I'll line them all up perfect a little later. But I'm making a cluster bar chart. And I want to show the product category compared to how many were ordered. Click on the canvas, pie chart, value of a whole, and then parts. So we want to see everything we sell by gender. Now that's a pretty cool pie chart. Now, I'm just kind of throwing them out there. I'll line them up, format them, easy, really nice. But you can copy and paste everything you make. So I'm going to just copy and paste that one and change it by sales, not by gender, but by marital status. So now we know, are males buying our product more or are females? So what I would like to do now is hang on 1 second. Because I want to put my card over there. There we go. Move my pie chart or bar chart down there. Put my pie chart up here. And look at, if you watching me, you see little orange lines. And those little orange lines are called smart grid lines. They help you align. They help you distribute. They help you get everything just perfect. Yes, I can go to my format ribbon and align and distribute, but those smart grid lines are doing it for me. And it's really easy when you start figuring out those orange lines. It's really nice on how they start showing you exactly how to align and distribute. It's just amazing. Power BI is like all the apps put in one almost. PowerPoint and websites, access. Let's get a map. Now, I do hear a little bit of background. If somebody has a question, you know I'm open to it if you need it. Or check your mute, just in case, because I might be somebody might be muted on, so I heard some background. So now I'm going to do the last one is a map, geographical area. And these maps are 3D. And I can say, what's our sales amount by country? And we can zoom in and hover, and we can make our own tool tips. It's just crazy good. And then the last thing, we always filter our data. So I'm going to add a filter, which are called slicers. Slicers are interactive filters. And I'm going to slice my data by country. So now I got a nice little slicer. I might have to do some rearranging, but I'm not going to waste your time. You get the point. But I can now say, what do we got in Canada? See how everything's changing. What do we got in Germany? What do we got in United Kingdom? You can format these any way you want, format these visuals, because you got formatting tools on the right. So anything you choose, you can change the colors. You can add analytical expressions like constant lines, average lines. So I added an average line to that graphic in the lower left. I would take time to format all my titles and make sure the titles are correct, so nobody in a meeting would say, oh, what are we looking at here? Right? Title them so everybody knows what they're looking at. And you know I would do that. I think I might show you a little tip here on that, just a little tip. Because most people, when they add titles, they have dark text like background for contrast. But see, the other is better because you want your eyes to pop to the title. So what I always do is I use light text and a dark background. And then center. Now, when you do format, yes, you have theme colors, themes that you can make your own company theme. You also can go to more colors and type in RGB codes or hex codes. So you can brand it to exactly your company. And like I just said earlier, about a minute ago, you can also go to view and change your themes. And one of the themes in here is colorblind. So everything is up to date on ADA, Adult Disability Acts. So if you have that in your company, ADA requirements, you can do that. And I just want to show you something that's so cool, and then I'll move on. I'm going to pick on, let's pick on this chart down here. So see this chart down here in the lower left, and oh my goodness, every good Microsoft product has Format Painter. Why not just paint the format from that map to that? There we go. How easy is that? But see, my end users want to know more about this data, right? What does this data actually mean? So here's what I mean by artificial intelligence. This is just one little aspect of it. I can click on a chart, go to insert a smart narrative. That's just one. When I click on it, it puts in a text box that explains exactly what's going on with that chart. Like at 1,247, tires and tubes are the highest sum of order quantity. And actually it was 8% higher than bike racks. Did you know that? And see, it gives you a narrative, and you can change that narrative. You can delete it, certain parts of it if you want. You can change the wording, but anything underlined is actually coming from the data. And every time it's refreshed, it gives you the latest, greatest information in a narrative form. So I've used that in reports at my company that I work with, New Horizons, and they all think I'm just like super smart or something. But I'm like, nope, it's just a smart narrative. Last thing you do is when you get everything made, you publish it to a online service. They're making me save it first, imagine that. And then you can save your report, publish it online to what's called a service. And then they ask you, you can have workspaces, much like channels and Teams. In fact, Teams and Power BI interact. So if you're already in a channel, it'd be a workspace here. And you can put them into workspaces. And now, since it's online, it's publishing. I go to my online service. And because of dual authentication, I'm looking for my cell phone, which I have right to the left. I'll approve that. Now it's online where I can make dashboards. I can make apps. And it just goes on and on and on. I can manage my data sets. I can have people connect to the data sets. So you can make dashboards, which are really quick and easy, just really visuals for cell phones. Reports are more detailed where people drill into the data and really dig deep into the data. And apps is everything in one. It's an app. So you can make an app too. Then I mentioned you can go out online and even get different visuals. So I always like to show this one because I get a lot of mileage on this one. Bigger the fish, bigger the number. If you're on a cell phone, you just put your finger on there. And you can make them to look nicer looking fish, of course. And then your Power BI desktop. There's more options. That's how you get out to the workplace, Microsoft Workplace, and get more visuals. So what my goal was today is to just say, hey, remember that agenda? What the heck is Microsoft Power BI? You probably already have access to it. Why should you use it? Basically, why not? But with this business intelligence, with this data explosion, come on, it's a great tool to use. And I gave you an overview of building something in the desktop and publishing it online. I do have a few minutes. If somebody has some questions, I'm open to them. But if not, I think
Justin did have a question, but I think somebody answered. But let's just make sure, Justin, did you get your answer that you were looking for on the topic of requirements are different that is provided with M365, i.e. connecting to different data sources or maybe different functionality? Just want to make sure you got that answered, Justin.
Yes, I did, I believe. I was just looking at it from the aspect of like the Power Platform requires, premium services to use premium connectors.
Mhm.
I was just wondering if this was similar type of licensing. So I know it was called out that, hey, you can connect all these different data sources, but do those data sources require a different license? Is kind of what I was getting at.
and it does belong, it does, the ones I showed you are with the Pro, but you might have some that, the ones I called out were the Pro, but then there's the Premium. And you might have to have the Premium for some of the data connections. And a really big difference between Premium and Pro is Premium, you can do 48 times a day for refreshes. And you can also distribute your content to outside your tenant and as a report server. So I hope that kind of just adds on to the response.
Yep, thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions from the group for Mike? All right, Mike, I think we have all the questions answered right now.
Well, I want to thank everybody who invested an hour. I hope this was beneficial. I really, truly do. I want to thank you guys for inviting me. I always like to talk about Power BI anytime I get a chance, ask my kids. And then I got to go back and train some people on Power BI. So
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mike. We appreciate it, and great content. And everybody can find this later on. We'll have it up on our YouTube channel so that you can review some of the things that Mike talked about. Now, turn it over to Michelle, and she's going to talk about shared channels.
Cool, I won't own it.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay, Donald?
Still distant.
Okay, we're still going to deal with that. All right, well, I am in the room at the Microsoft Technology Center, so we are testing out all the capabilities. Probably you're hearing me through the ceiling microphones. I do have another microphone and another microphone, so I'll probably just switch to the handheld as soon as I share my screen.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Yes. All right, can you see my screen and hear me okay? Maybe I'll have to shout.
I saw.
Can
from
see the screen. Still, the sound is the issue.
Okay. I'm gonna guess that this guy just needs to be adjusted, so I'll go into mic mode.
Much better.
Is that better?
Yep.
All right. This is why we are here testing all those capabilities before you all come in, so we have it all figured out. Anyway, thanks so much, Mike. Power BI was a fantastic session. If anybody has any follow-up questions, please put them in the chat. Let me go ahead and introduce myself. I am Michelle Gilbert. I'm a Director of Customer Success here at Microsoft, focused on modern work. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and we also have our Microsoft 365 user group channel on YouTube. I am the board president, and today I'm going to be talking to you about shared channels. So here's our agenda. We're going to walk through creating and sharing a shared channel from an end user perspective. We're going to go into understanding what is Azure AD B2B Direct Connect or cross-tenant access. It's a mouthful. I'll talk about Teams governance, so what you really need to do in order to enable shared channels in the Teams Admin Center, along with some security and limits. And if you wouldn't mind down watching, if there are any questions in the chat, feel free to come off mute yourself and let me know, or anyone else. Just go ahead and feel free to interrupt me. Lots of good content in here. I may go over my 1 hour, but we'll still get out of our user group on time with our follow-up for Q&A and, of course, our surveys. Okay, so Microsoft Teams is really a place for all things to be able to meet, chat, call each other, share documents, collaborate on documents. This other portion here is called Teams Connect. This is where you can collaborate seamlessly across organizations. So it's a newer capability. We came out with standard channels inside of Teams, private channels. In this particular area, it's around shared channels. As you can see here, it really opens up that flexibility to go not just internally across different departments, but also externally across different organizations. What I wanted to highlight on this particular slide is really it's around no tenant switching. So if you are a guest in somebody's tenant, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's where you have to go up to your face and you have to change to a different tenant, which basically kicks you out of your tenant and into another organization. It's really difficult because it's hard to know, is somebody trying to connect with you inside of your organization? Well, now you've switched for that duration that you're in there. Unless, of course, you have another browser. And shared channels is going to get rid of that. So you no longer are going to be in two locations. You're just going to be in one Teams client and be able to connect no matter who you're with on not only communication, right? Because that's federation, but also collaboration. So it's a whole new model. It also helps in avoiding team proliferation because no longer do you need to be creating another team and another team. You can just create a shared channel in an already existing team. It can have automatic member management inside of Azure AD, but you still need to individually add them to that shared channel. So it's really around scaling easily, especially when you think of the different organizations that you might want to collaborate with. I would say no longer really do you need to think about attaching a document inside of email to send to another company. When you're working on a project, like maybe a rebuild of your website, or you have some sort of outside counsel that you're bringing into a case matter, for instance. So there are multiple reasons why you would be doing this. And I'm going to walk you through kind of the how-to of creating that. All right, so who are shared channels for? These are for internal employees, internal teams, external employees, or external people, and external teams. Now, I'm going to introduce you to a concept called inbound access and outbound access, and then both inbound and outbound. It kind of sounds like, okay, what do I need to do with inbound and outbound, and why do we have some of this technical terminology? But it's important because that's how you're actually opening up the door for the person to come inside of your organization. Or you're opening up the door to let somebody that's internal to your company to go outside to another person's organization. So think of it like a tunnel. So like I said, both internal and or external. The first portion here is you can share with people. So in-tenant members and external Azure AD members. Now I want to highlight the Azure AD. In order for you to leverage shared channels with another organization, they must be using Azure Active Directory. So guest access is different in that regard. Guest access allows for other types of identity, but with shared channels, you do need to be leveraging Azure Active Directory. So if they're using Microsoft products, Microsoft 365, then they can go ahead and you can bring them in to your cross-tenant access settings. Hopefully, you're going to walk away really understanding what I'm talking about here. Let me first level set and talk about the glossary. So for those of you that are a little newer to our user group, maybe newer to Microsoft products, a tenant means an organization's dedicated instance of the services that you subscribe for at Microsoft. Now, in-tenant members and in-tenant team, those are people inside of your organization. And the external, that would be the members or people that you connect to and teams you connect to outside of your organization. And the three ways that you're going to leverage shared channels is that you can share with people inside your company and people who are external, but they leverage Azure AD as a way they authenticate to Microsoft products. The second portion is you can share with a team. So if you have a team already that you work with, so a good example would be you're rebranding or you're redoing your SharePoint intranet. Chances are you're going to also be needing to work with maybe marketing, maybe communications, maybe training. And you already have maybe your intranet or communication site team, but there's a portion that maybe not all team members will be in that team. So a good example for creating a team or creating a shared channel would be to bring people in who aren't already members of that team. And, frankly, they don't need to see all the other stuff. Maybe it's a marketing group and you're working on branding. Maybe the IT pro folks, they don't really work in that, and maybe marketing doesn't need to see what's going on in the IT portion configuration and planning of your intranet. So that's where you would just create a shared channel and bring those people in. And when you create a shared channel, by default, it is checkmarked that everybody on the team will have access to that site or to that channel. Make sure that you know that by default, they will see it. If you don't want them to, you can certainly uncheck that. And then share with a team you own. So if you're an owner of that marketing team, you can go ahead, create that shared channel, and then invite that entire team. So if you own that team, it's really seamless. So let me talk a little bit. So you have learned now that you can create a shared channel. You can share it with people inside of your organization. Yep, people outside of your organization. Now I'm going to drill in a little bit around what does external B2B direct connect mean? This is where you want to connect to people outside your company. Just like you do with email, however, you don't want to rely on email any longer. You just want to work in Teams, make it super simple. So I've come up with these scenarios, what I would think of as company policies that you may have internally. And then what is that Azure Active Directory cross-tenant access setting rule that you need to apply? So the first one is you invite people outside of your company to meet in your location. The policy here would be we only invite people to our location and we don't let our employees travel to other locations. Okay, so kind of an interesting scenario, right? You don't want your employees going anywhere else. And this very well could be real but you have maybe your clients come to your business. This would be called an inbound access rule. You are allowing, just like, when you enter at a door, you're allowing them in. Second scenario here is another company invites you to their location. Now, the company policy here is we don't allow employees to invite people to our location for some reason. Maybe it's a plant that's locked down. It could be a healthcare facility. We don't want people in this area, but we do allow other people to go outside into another location or another company to do that collaboration. We call that an outbound access. So you're basically opening the door for employees to go out and visit those other locations. So it's important that you know the distinction, because you may have certain rules that you only want one company to come into your organization, or you want just one employee to go out to this one other organization. So you have to really think through what are going to be your policies around that. The third one here is you actually have an open door. So we call that federation with chat. This is very much like federation with collaboration. So you invite or get invited to meet, and it's allowed. Now, here's the caveat. If you do allow that, you have to also allow both inbound and outbound access. So you're saying, I'm going to allow this company to come in. So I'm going to say this domain I allow to come and collaborate inside of this M365 group, which equals team. And also you have to allow, so the company who's allowing, they need to put in an inbound access. And the company who's accepting, they have to put in an outbound access. So think about this in terms of you make the rules, but you have to have both IT departments or IT architects or even security folks from both organizations talk to each other. So it's really important that you know that, because those configurations need to be made on the tenant of portal.azure.com and Azure AD on both sides in order to have that handshake to allow each other to communicate. And we're going to get into a whole lot more in a deeper level, but let's just look at the end user perspective. So this is what creating, we're going to go through the scenario of creating a shared channel, and only team owners can create those shared channels. That's first rule. So this is the scenario here is that I'm a team owner and I'm going to create a channel. So I'll click on my ellipsis like I normally do. I'll click on add a channel. I'll go in here and my channel type that I choose is shared. And like I said, highlight by default, the channel is shared with everyone on this team. And if we do not want that, which I would assume most people probably don't want this explosion of all these shared channels in the teams, if it's specific for a subset, go ahead and uncheck that and then put the people in there directly. Now, when you are inviting external people, you need to put in their email address. This is the people picker. The picker is selected by the cross-tenant access settings that you place in Azure AD, and I'll show you what that looks like. But in this scenario, you can see both Beth and Cassandra from two different organizations are being added to this shared channel. So again, my example earlier, you're building your SharePoint intranet, a new communication site, and you have maybe a marketing company that you're leveraging and a design company. You can bring them both inside to do some of that collaboration, that work, even having meetings together. This is how you would do it. You type in their email address, and as you can see here, by default, they are a member of your channel. They cannot be an owner. You go ahead and hit done. And this is what it looks like from the external AD member. They get a notification in their feed that a channel has been shared with them. And this is what it would look like. So the chorus launch is maybe in someone else's tenant, but when they get added, what gets added is the name of the team. And something interesting here, you no longer see the general channel. And the reason why is because you're not in that tenant. You're not a member of that organization. all you see is the channel that's been shared with you. And then you can also see the icon. So it's a new lock. That's the new icon where I think private channels kind of have a padlock. This is more of an interlock inside of that shared channel. So as you can see, you see the team and you see the shared channel. And this is the experience for an external user. And there's a question in the room.
In the chat channel, in the chat,
Okay.
that's all.
All right.
Manoj asks, if guest access is not allowed, will this work to add external users in a shared channel?
If guest access, so we are going to talk about guest access. I think terminology is key here. There is such a thing as a guest and an external member. A guest is someone, if I understand your question correctly, Manoj, is that external means using Azure Active Directory B2B for collaboration. That's different than Azure Active Directory B2B Direct Connect. So the two differences there is guest access, that's been around for a while. When you add someone to that, it has an invite process. That person gets added to your Azure Active Directory directory service. However, if you're using Direct Connect, there is no invite process. You are basically putting them in hard code into the rule, and they don't get added to your directory member service. So it's a different way. You're not, guest access is switching tenants. Shared channels is there's no switching of tenants. So did that help answer your question?
I think so. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming off mute too. Appreciate that. Because there is a distinction, and that's extremely different approach to what we're thinking about at Microsoft in terms of to make it easier for you to not just communicate, but also collaborate together and being in one location and not having to switch. And that's the ultimate goal. So shared channels is available. The one portion that we just talked about is the external piece, but it's available internally too. So just to recap, creating a shared channel, you add the channel, you select shared, you decide if you want to keep it checkmarked for everyone else to inherit the permission to that. And then, of course, sharing the design or sharing the channel with folks. So let's talk about sharing. Sharing a shared channel looks a little bit different than what we're used to. If you are let's go back 1 second on that, just to make sure you see that. If you are a channel owner, you can share a channel with people inside or outside your org. Now that does rely on having your cross-tenant access settings set up. If you do not have that set up in Azure AD and you put in an email address, it just won't come up in the people picker. I mean, it's simple as that. So you have to be very deliberate about who you allow. And if you allow one person, that's the only email address that will come up when you're typing that in. But let's look at just sharing with people. So the first scenario here is you just want to share the channel with one person. Pretty common. You want to go ahead and just add them. You type in their email address, the name of the person, if they're in the org. If they're outside, it does need to be their email address. And you simply select it from the list and you hit share. They'll get notified in their activity feed. Hey, somebody shared a channel with you. Second piece is sharing a channel within a team. So now we're going to the shared channel. We're going to the ellipsis and we're saying, I want to share it with a team. This is really fascinating, the way that they architected this process flow that I find super relevant and important to understand. So if I'm sharing a channel with a team, I first type the name of a team owner. So if you obviously have had to already communicate to them and say, oh, you want to create a shared channel, here's the name of the team, or here's the team owner, you're going to have to contact them in order to get that approval. So one, you need to know the name of the owner. If it's outside your org, you still have to type the email address of that team owner and then select it from the list. So again, similar, putting in the name versus an email address, but now on the back end, there's a different approval process. So what happens here, there's actually an invite process. So the channel owner can see they get an invite. So under, as the owner who is inviting that team, I see that I sent the invite. And then if I'm the team owner, I can either accept or decline the team invite. And how I'm getting notified that, hey, I want to share a channel with your team, I'll see that in my activity feed. So it's a little bit different. Here's the process. So I've kind of outlined here, the channel owner shares channel with a team owner and an invite gets sent. The team owner can either accept or decline the invite. And if accepted, now here's the thing that to really note, if selected, the team owner selects the team and the channel owner then gets notified. So a team doesn't even get accepted yet. It's the team owner that will then go, oh, marketing team will then now be added to the intranet team, right? The marketing team will be added to that shared channel. And then if declined, of course, it'll go back to the owner to say, this has been canceled or declined. And then, of course, that's that next step. The channel owner needs to approve or deny the selection of a team to be added. So it's actually a full loop. So let me just cover it real quick. It will happen and you won't even realize it because it's just under the hood a little bit. But the channel owner says, hey, team owner, I want to add you and whatever team you want to this team. Then the team owner says, oh yeah, I have this team over here. I want that added. And then gets sent over to the channel owner again. The channel owner says, yep, that's the team that we want added in the shared channel. So that is the process. It is a little bit of a process. And then this one, super simple because you are sharing as a third share, is that sharing with a team you own. There's no approval here, right? Because you're the owner of that team. You're going to go ahead and in that process, you get a selection of teams you own and that's how you get it added. So right here, you're sharing a channel with your own team. They'll get notifications and of course they can access that channel right away. Those are the 3 ways of sharing channels. So here's in summary, it's with people, it's with a team, and with a team that you own. The caveat or the, I guess, longer answer is when you're sharing with a team, you do need to know the team owner. There is an invite process, an approval process, and a feedback loop that says, here's the team I want added to the shared channel. And then the channel owner will go, yep, that's the team, check, approve. A little bit more thoughtful in that one process. All right, so I absolutely love this next section here because I had lived in SharePoint for so many years. This is, okay, how do I find out where my channel site is? Here I am in the SharePoint Admin Center. I can go into active sites. I see my team name, Teams Champion Program. It's also, behind that is a SharePoint site, of course. And then I can see this column called Channel Sites. When I click on that, I can then see, oh, there's my shared channel. So if I'm a SharePoint admin, I can find it in that way. I can also find it by doing a PowerShell script and calling out the shared channel template. But it's nice because it's all documented in here, and a separate channel is created for each private or shared channel. So it uses that SharePoint permission model. What to note about that is that shared channels does not leverage M365 groups. So to reiterate there, shared channels does not leverage M365 groups. And what do we know by saying that from being in these user group sessions for so long? An M365 group is a group of services that enables you to have a SharePoint site. It enables you to have an Outlook mailbox, a planner plan. Now, creating a shared channel does not create that. It actually creates a SharePoint permission group. That means there is no Exchange mailbox behind that. There is no planner plan behind that because planner uses M365. groups construct as well. So just to, keeping that in the back of your mind, if you're an architect out there, that's what it's leveraging. If you're in security, that's what it's leveraging. It's a different model. And when you do create the SharePoint or the share channel, it creates a site for you, right, as we just saw in the admin center. And then if you want to navigate, you can see on this page in the top left, in the navigation, there is a link for parent team. So if you wanted to try to leverage, if you're internal and you have access to the parent team, you will see that link. So you can go up and navigate up. That's all this example is for. All right, now we're going to get down and dirty to the IT Pro section. This is going to be the deeper, darker, well, let's say deeper level. Leveraging Azure AD, understanding what is B2B Direct Connect. This is a new external identity that's called cross-tenant access settings. This is a lot of text on this slide, so I'm going to just cover it one by one, but I wanted to keep it all because I wanted it to be very clear and what the intention and how to use Direct Connect. All right, so it's a feature of external identities. It lets you set up a mutual trust relationship. I should underline mutual because it must be mutual with another Azure AD org for seamless collaboration. So think about when you set up federation and you allow your company to chat with another company, they also in turn have to do the same thing. They have to say, yes, we also want to chat with you. Now what that is called a mutual trust. You both agree to talk to each other. I tend to think of Direct Connect is now, hey, we already let you talk. Now let's just let you collaborate on files. So it's a federation if it isn't necessarily termed that way, but if you can think about it like that, we are allowing a mutual trust for you both to federate to collaborate together. And this feature only currently works with Microsoft Teams shared channels. Now that's in our documentation. What's interesting here is that what else will it work with in the future? Because it says currently. So I always think that, I wonder what else is coming. And then with B2B Direct Connect, users from both organizations can work together using their home credentials. So think of home credentials. We talked earlier, you have to have Azure AD authentication. So it's your work email address and your other organizations, those colleagues, their work address, right? That's how they have to authenticate. And that's the only identity that you can use to allow for this external access. And it has to be added to each other's cross-tenant access settings. I'll show you what that means. You do use B2B Direct Connect to share resources or resources across multiple Azure AD tenants within your company. And the reason why I have that line in is that it doesn't have to be just a one-to-one relationship. If you leverage or collaborate with multiple organizations, you can do so and bring them all in. So if you have company A and company B that you're working on this project with, you can bring them both into the shared channel. So now you have 3 organizations collaborating in one shared channel. That's a pretty common scenario. Again, I'm going to reiterate, I did underline it here, requires a mutual trust relationship between 2 or more Azure AD organizations to allow access to the resources. Both the resource organization and the external organization or organizations need to mutually enable B2B Direct Connect in that cross-tenant access setting. And I highlight that and I stress that because it is a handshake. They open the door for you and you open the door for them. And that's the only way that this will work. And then of course, when that trust is established, the B2B Direct Connect user has then single sign-on access to those resources outside of their organization, but really in the Teams client using their own credentials that they log into in what we call like their home tenant or home Azure AD org. So hopefully that will be the slide has the most text, but hopefully I hit the bullets on those that that helped you kind of understand the stress of how mutual trust is established. There's a question in the room.
Does B2B Direct Connect allow you to have a unified global address list in Teams? So if I search for Michelle and Michelle's in a different company, do I see her when I try to chat, or is it only shared channels?
It is only in shared channels. So hopefully everyone heard that question. He basically wanted to know if these people get added to some sort of global address book. The only way that you're going to see the external people is in a Teams channel, a shared channel, when you deliberately put in their email address. That's the only location.
You need their full email address.
And you need their full email address. Correct. We did cover that a couple times, but it is very important, their full email address that they use to log into Azure AD. And there's another question here in the room.
Are there any limitations on the different types of tenants, education, GCC, GCC High?
Yeah, shared channels first came out with enterprise tenants, commercial tenants, and I believe there'll be more coming. I don't think it's been rolled out quite yet, but you know, I always say go to the Microsoft roadmap. I may have a slide on that, on when it is coming. Those might be in private preview right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I love that question, by the way. We always get at the user group. We always welcome, and we always try to be ready for them. So architecturally, when you create a team, this is what shared channels looks like. Standard channels, that's for internal users, and of course, B2B or Azure business-to-business collaboration. That's using guests. Private channel, same concept. Now shared channel, this is business-to-business using Direct Connect. So a different model, brand new for Azure AD. So here are the differences. So here's B2B collaboration, and we did have this question earlier. And I wanted to just cover the difference because if you're leveraging B2B, these are all net new things to know. So B2B Direct Connect is the new name. There's no guest account created in the directory. External participants access their own Azure AD identity, so like federation. You cannot use private channels. So if you wanted to spin up a private channel, if you think back to what I just showed you architecturally, private channels only uses Azure AD B2B collaboration. You get to stay signed into your team's client. I mean, I think that gets the applause, right? That's what we've been waiting for. I don't want to switch anymore to access your shared channels. You cannot use non-Azure AD accounts. Currently, I know that's the current state. I have never seen otherwise, because this really is the relationship between Azure AD environments. Again, does not require tenant switching, which is a joy. Visual aid. So the visual aid for B2B collaboration is that when you had their name or you're looking for them, it actually said guest. Now you'll have the same thing, name of tenant at the team level. So you get to see what organization you're connecting to, and whether it says the user versus guest at the shared channel level. Here's something interesting, no invitation sent. So you know in B2B, you can allow a certain group or maybe some IT pro folks, or maybe you allowed everyone to send invitations. There is no invitation process. This is very much an IT admin configured process, probably with an approval that then responds to you to say configuration is set. Now you as a team owner or a channel owner, now you can add them into that team. So there has to be some admin work that's pre-configured, which is why there's no invitation sent, because the invitation process or the agreed trust or mutual trust has to be between two IT departments or two PMs in two different organizations to make that configuration. And of course, along with B2B Collab, we also are doing access reviews in B2B Direct Connect. So here's another great architectural diagram. This is B2B collaboration. This is what we use for private channels. As you can see, the user or admin makes the invitation. In Azure AD, it spits out an invitation process. Then there's a redemption that the end user who got request had to click on, and then they got access into the team, as well as their user object was added to the Azure AD directory service. So that would be, kind of the way that we would do it for private channels, leveraging B2B collaboration. Now, this is a different route, right? This is Direct Connect. This is where you have a resource tenant or multiple, and then you have your home tenant. So you create the Microsoft Teams shared channel. If I'm going to allow a resource to come in, then I need, or for people to go out, I need both inbound and outbound access, right? Remember, I'm inviting them in and they're inviting, and we're allowing them to go out. All right, so this is Azure AD, if you're not familiar. Maybe this is not, your realm, but still interesting to hear the topic. In Azure AD, when you go to external identities, you see cross-tenant access settings. That's now a subsection. And by default, you see organizational settings is the tab. This is where you manage your trust relationships with other Azure AD orgs. And this is for both Azure AD B2B and for Direct Connect. So when you go in there, you're going to see them both. And you can do kind of high level management of your organizations, or you can even change them up. All right, so in order to manage them, you can see here, I can add an organization. Something to note, B2B Direct Connect by default is off. And what I mean by that, so in the Teams Admin Center, shared channels is available by default. So what that means is internally, if you're leveraging shared channels, it's turned on and you can start creating them and sharing them inside of your company. If you want to bring somebody from another organization into a shared channel, you're going to have to probably go to your IT administrators and go through the request process, because by default it is turned off. And if you want to request, they're going to have to do the configuration by enabling the inbound access from external to your internal tenant, or the outbound access. You're going to have them work with another company to enable internal to the internal to external tenant. There is some granular control, much like Azure B2B Collab. You can do things very granular. You can block an entire company, or you can allow everyone and block one person. So it can be at the user level, the group level, or even the app level. So it also does controls allowing you to do trust claims from external tenants. So these are some of the controls that you can do. And as you see here, this is the inbound access settings. And all four of them are in here. So that's B2B collaboration for the users and groups, B2B collaboration for the apps. Same thing with the Direct Connect for the groups and users, and then for the apps. By default, this is what you're going to see. The Direct Connect pieces will all be blocked. By default, they are all blocked. This is where you have to do some enablement. So if you're going to enable them, you have to make sure you click on the B2B Direct Connect tab. I've gotten in the, and I don't know about you if you've played with this yet, I've gotten in the habit that when I come in here and I go into my inbound access settings, I start to create them. By default, it goes to the first tab, which is B2B collaboration. I don't want to use guest access anymore. I actually would love to get rid of all my guests out of my tenant. Just note that that's by default. Make sure you go over to the other tab, B2B Direct Connect. And then this is where you can say external users and groups, allowing and blocking, and where you want to put those controls in place. So some things to note here. When you do add the users and groups, guess what? You're going to need things like a group ID from another company. So you do need to communicate with your admins in order to know, first off, you're going to need a tenant ID to enable. You're going to need a group ID if it's a team that you want to collaborate with. And if it's only a user, you're going to need that user ID. That's found only in another person's tenant's Azure Active Directory. So there's a level of communication to put in some of these internal, these inbound and outbound access settings. All right, I'm going to pause there. Are there any questions in the chat?
Yes, Michelle, I have.
Okay.
So this is great question. When you say get rid of all guest accounts and set up B2B Connect, do
I
you
know,
mind
it's
explaining on this?
You know, I think it depends on each company. I mean, I personally think that just having a cleaner directory service, because with guests, you don't know, I mean, you're gonna have to do a lot of work in order to figure out who's active and who's not. And I think it's hard to scale because over time, that is just like SharePoint creep and Teams proliferation. These things grow and it's hard to control. And having a clean Azure Active Directory to me is extremely important. So if we can find a way, if you're not using, if you think of evolving from guest access from SharePoint, guest access out of Teams to leverage some of these cross-tenant access settings, I think that's just an evolution and a maturity that you'd want to one day get to be able to use something that has a better user experience and is more locked down for security reasons. So that's just me. It's certainly my opinion. I don't think I represent Microsoft in saying it, although I think one day, you know, ultimately is you want to use the identity, the external identity that fits your business model. That
Perfect.
help?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
There's two more questions. Is there a limit to the number of other tenants you can grant access to a team?
I do have limits at the end, so I'll share that. I don't know if that's covered in there. I don't think they're, I mean, I guess I haven't hit the limit, and I'll double check to see if that's a part of it. And if not, I'll come back and answer it.
The next question is similar.
Okay, great.
All around the
Yeah, I
limits.
was gonna say there probably is not a limit, but I'm sure there is a limit of some sort. I don't know what that limit would be, but I don't think you'll run into it. All right, let's keep
What
going.
kind of logs?
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry, I asked a little bit ago. What kind of logging is there in here when you have direct?
Yep, I have that covered on one of the slides too, but every sign in will be in your sign in logs. And then you can also perform access reviews. There's other things depending on what licensing you have in Azure AD that you can get more granular into the activity from those external identities.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. And of course, there's a graph API. So building some of that, pulling from the graph can also help. But I think I scraped every document I could on how to do some of that monitoring or the calling of things that you may consider putting in place. All right, so now I'm going to switch, and I am now a Teams admin. I'm just going to talk to you real quick around the out-of-the-box shared channel policy. By default in the Teams Admin Center, in the Teams settings, there's where you actually have private channels. We are probably all aware of that one. We've now added 3 more. So the creation of a shared channel is one. Inviting external users to a shared channel, that's got to be set to on as well. Now, inviting external users to a shared channel, just to pause on that a second, just because a channel owner or a team owner invites an external person to a shared channel does not give them access to that channel. Remember, the configuration has to be done first in Azure AD. Matter of fact, if you enable this for everyone and they put in an email address, it will only be in a people picker, or it will only have a drop down of people who are already added. So it's kind of like there's no risk there. However, they can only add an email address of what's already been added inside of Azure AD. So just caveat there. It looks risky. but there's no risk because the person already has to be approved inside of the cross-tenant access settings. And then the last one there is joining external shared channels. This is where it doesn't give them access to join it. However, the configuration for them to be allowed through outbound access has to be configured.
Right.
We're not saying, oh yeah, you can just go ahead and invite whoever you want or join whatever you want. This does appear, and it is at the user level, but administratively, it already is blocked. Okay. But this is if you wanted to have a policy locked down to people who have requested access to join an external, the configuration's been done. Now you create this policy, custom policy, and you apply that to that user or to that group of users that you know will be taking advantage of joining external communities or inviting people internally to their share channel. So thing here, default is on. So shared channels are on by default for internal sharing. It is a per user policy for who can initiate or accept an external sharing. This is where you can manage the channel lifecycle and managing members, adding, removing, promoting, demoting. This can all be done in the Teams Admin Center, along with some PowerShell and Graph API support that I'll show you. Okay, so we covered this. I did it pretty quick, but I think it's still a good slide. Creating the shared channel. When on, team owners can create them internal. Inviting external. When on, owners and members can invite external, where the cross-organizational trust has already been configured. And then joining external shared channels. When on, users can participate in shared channels created by other organizations, again, where a cross-organization trust has been configured. All right, some things to know. Team owners are always in control still. Actually, that would be the admins are in control in this case, right? The Azure AD. Then team owners are in control because only team owners can create the shared channel. Team owners see the name and description of all shared channels. Doesn't mean they have access. Team owners can delete shared channels without being a member. That's true. Only team owners can accept the invite. Team owners can terminate the sharing relationship. And shared channels inherit labels from the team on creation. So any sensitivity labels you have at the top level, I'm not trying to say that this is a parent-child relationship. However, it does inherit it. Architecturally, it inherits from the team level. All right, so that's the team. Now, shared channel owners, they're also fully empowered. Only in tenant, so remember, in your organization, members can be channel owners. That means nobody outside your organization can be the owner of that shared channel. Channel owners manage the life cycle, right? So they manage all the life cycle. Removing a member from the team does not remove from the shared channel. So if the channel was shared directly, if you want to yank a person out of there, you can certainly do that. The last owner cannot be removed from a shared channel. So I think that's true for all of them. We want to make sure there's always an owner. Best practice is to have 2 owners of any team or private or shared channel. And it can override the default channel settings. And remember when I created or showed you the create a shared channel, and you can check mark to add members, this is kind of what that's referring to is the default. All right, so sharing and co-authoring on files. Obviously, you have to have mutual cross-organization trust in place. You have to really understand the process. It is a documented process. Admins need to be involved. Security and legal and risk should certainly be involved too. And then there's also all the way down to the sharing and co-authoring of files. So each shared channel, as I mentioned, is backed by a dedicated SharePoint site collection. It is not using the SharePoint permission, or it's not using M365 groups. It is leveraging a SharePoint permission model. Super important. No M365 groups means no Outlook. It also means no planner, which I know that question might come up. Hey, can I have a planner inside of my shared channel. We love to use it to collaborate cross-organizationally. The answer is no, because Planner leverages M365 groups. The same is true for a private channel. That's why Planner is not associated, because private and shared both use SharePoint permission. And in particular, the shared channel has a custom template, team channel #1. Any of you that are still running PowerShell reports to get a list of all your private channels or all of your shared channels, you can now use that template to retrieve them. A little more enhanced SPO admin experience. What I mean by that, you saw where you can create, you can see the team site collection and then see the list of channels and drill in and see that there is a shared channel associated to that SharePoint team site. All right, there's no default channel folder in the document library. So remember the word general. General is not a folder that exists in the default document library. It can be shared only with anyone inside of your tenant or using Azure B2B Direct Connect. And then external users can only share with members of the channel. So there is no sharing outside of the core permission model that shared channels leverages within SharePoint group. Okay, meet your team directly from the shared channel. This is obvious. I think you can be inside of the shared channel itself, or you can be inside of the SharePoint site. All right, some caveats. Shared channels support, does support Meet Now and scheduled meetings. The channel members are not by default added as meeting participants like standard. So it's not going to prompt you. If you wanted to have a channel meeting, you're still going to want to send out the invite process. It doesn't automatically add the participants. Only the host tenant. So if I create a shared channel and I wanted to have a couple different organizations inside of this shared channel, I am still the only one. I have the control, but I'm the only one who can do Meet Now or to schedule a meeting. Right? You don't have options in my tenant to create meetings. That's still owned by the original in-tenant users. Now, of course, external members can join any ongoing meetings or scheduled meetings. I added this in if you haven't seen it yet, but how do you get public preview access to shared channels? We're already in GA, but at least something to note, if you have not seen update policies, this is a fantastic way to get ahead of the game by a few weeks at least to see what's happening in Teams before everyone else. So if there's changes that come out to shared channels or anything like that, you would see them first. And that's located in the Teams Admin Center. All right, a little bit about governance and maybe some APIs and monitoring. A couple of things here, collaborating on apps in real time. So shared channels does support tabs and connectors. It's very similar to private channels and when that was rolled out. So if you know those rules, they're super similar. There is a support for bots, message extensions, and of course, line of business apps. Apps SDK is also available. Apps must be installed at the team level to be able to be installed at the shared channel. Hopefully that's clear. So it needs to be at the team in order for the shared channel to leverage it. And Planner says post-GA support. I haven't seen it yet, but that would be great if they could re-architect how Planner leverages permissions and could leverage the SharePoint permission model in order for the shared channel to start leveraging it. Okay, I'm not going to run through this. We've gone through enough, but there is a rich API set for building apps to connect into shared channels, to get all your channels and so forth. So finer grain permissions as well. Of course, it's built on Microsoft 365 security and compliance features. So really important, screenshot this slide and give it to your security team, because this is going to be something they're going to want to care about. Host compliance policies apply when a channel is shared with other tenants. the host meaning me, and I'm sharing with you what my compliance policy is applied when it's shared with you. You need to probably know what those are. Maybe not you as the end user or the shared channel owner or even the team owner, but this needs to be understood at the administrator or at the stakeholder level. Team still continues to be a unit of management, which means that channels inherits team sensitivity label and geo. So if you say, hey, this team, I'm using multi-geo, I'm in this location, if you create a shared channel, it will inherit that same thing. If this team is highly sensitive, and that's the classification that you have as a label, the shared channel will inherit it. So if you don't want to create a shared channel with high sensitive information, then I would presume you want to create a new team or leverage another team to create that shared channel with the sensitivity label that you need. E-discovery, channel messages are in a dedicated mailbox, and search includes all SharePoint sites for channels in Teams. Okay, so the search includes all SharePoint sites. So basically, you're boxed into that site collection. So whoever has access to it, that search will be inside of that particular channel. For those of you who are using legal hold, only the host tenant members can be put on legal hold. Basically, I think that seems like a no-brainer. I can't put somebody outside of my tenant or my company on a legal hold, right? That doesn't make any sense because they're not my employee. However, I can put my own employees on a legal hold. And that's true for information barriers. If I have information barriers set and I say, hey, this group of people cannot talk to this group of people, I can't also apply information barriers to people outside of my company. Right, so that I think is pretty common sense. Retention and DLP, policies are applied on the team, will apply to all shared channels in the team. Again, team is kind of like the parent, and it's a unit of management. Everything underneath, whether you're talking about DLP, retention, sensitivity labels, multi-geo, all gets inherited from that unit of management. Yes, you can monitor and audit with the Azure AD logs. And if you are leveraging access reviews, which I believe is Azure AD Premium 2 capability, that you'll be able to see B2B Connect users inside of those access reviews. Okay, so some limitations. I think we're almost at time. I knew I was going to go to at least 2:40. But I'll be here for questions too. So here are some of the limits. Numbers of members in a team, same as I think all the other channels, or same as it is today, 25,000. Number of shared channels per team, that's 200. That's the same as other types of channels. That does include deleted. Super important. When you delete it and you're already at 199 and you add 2 more, guess what? Only 1 will be created because that deleted one is sitting in a soft delete status. So clean up your old channels. Number of teams a channel can be shared with, 50. So I think we were talking about like what's some of the limits. This is the shared channel limit. So 50 number of members in a shared channel. So 5,000 direct members in the shared channel, including up to 50 teams. So that is a limit, only 5,000. If you need to go over that, then I think you'd probably want to create a separate shared channel. And let's see, number of organizations will be managed via B2B Direct Connect. Yeah, and we did talk about that. The limit, I guess I don't have it written here on the number of organizations, but I'd imagine it's out on our docs.microsoft.com under B2B Direct Connect on what our limit is. And maybe somebody in the call today can go and take a look at that. Post it in there. So, okay, this is really fine print, but hopefully you can see, because I'll tell you that this is something that I created as an example that I think almost when I have gone through the process of doing external identity using cross-tenant access settings with another organization that I documented all the details that we actually need to share between two companies. So the first one being, who's the project content, who's the technical content, who are all the project members that we're going to create this shared channel for, what are the environments, the team name. We both have to share what the team name is, the shared channel name, the Microsoft 365 group ID. I mean, this is like, I tried to cover absolutely everything, and you all get an access to this. Perhaps what's the business reason? The cross-tenant access settings, and this is where you have to actually document what are the inbound access settings from your company A, what is the outbound access settings, what is the tenant ID? You actually need the tenant ID in order to create this external mutual trust. And then as you see, all the other pieces there, the team's policy, how is our team's policy documented? Do we have to create a separate one to allow people to join external and then to be able to apply that to the user? Who are those users? Is it an M365 group? So as you can see, it goes on and on, but I think I've thought about as much as I went through the process that each company between A and B, for instance, needs to have documented in order to share with each other. So hopefully that gives you a good starting point. There is more upfront on the administration portion, but then the user experience, the security model, the ability to limit it to say, we are both mutually going to accept that we are enabling multi-factor authentication. If we are going to connect to each other, we're going to have compliant devices. We agree on that. So it gets into a little more granularity, but it also allows you to establish, I think, a more secure trust in order for you to be able to seamlessly have your end users connect together and collaborate on files. All right, here's all my resources. There are many. You will all get a copy of this. We'll put it on our website. Lots to know. And first off, thank you for your attention, your time, for attending today. And feel free to reach out or put any questions in the chat. And with that, I think I'll go ahead and throw this to